So lots of exciting things going on this week in America, and in particularly in the bottom end of America. And we're going to talk about veterans, and we're going to talk about the disabled, and how the Donald Trump administration is targeting them for cuts. So he made a promise he wasn't going to touch Social Security. Then he comes out with this imaginary list of people, kind of like the Epstein list, where 300-year-old people were receiving Social Security checks. But just like the Epstein list, no arrests were made and no one was identified. If a 300-year-old or if someone pretending to be a 300-year-old was fraudulently collecting money from some government agency, that money has to physically go to an account, and then someone has to take that money out of the account. So they would have a record of these people, but these people don't exist. And what we're finding out now, that not only there wasn't taken any money, no money was received, but their names were on the list because they were issued a Social Security number. So if you're issued a Social Security number for whatever reason, you will end up on this list. And one day, a president may take your 300 years from now, some president may take your name and claim that someone is fraudulently collecting benefits. But we're not going to talk about the 200 and 300-year-old people. We're going to talk about the people who are still alive and how they are going to be cut from Social Security. And it's a really simple plan, and no one's seen this. I never heard anybody else talking about it, but I've seen it. I've seen it right from the jump. I knew what they were doing. Through local governments, the Trump administration is instructing these local governments to come up, and you just seen one in San Jose, the state of Florida, passed other legislation about homeless people, where they're going to build some type of shelter or take an existing shelter. And what they're going to do is they're going to go around and find everyone who's homeless, and they're going to give them an option: either go to jail for being homeless, because now it's a crime in the state of Florida and other municipalities like San Jose and all over the United States, or you go to this shelter, this government shelter. And what happens is, well, if you go to jail, that person loses their benefits while they're in jail. But if they go into the shelter, their benefits will also be suspended, because if you're in any type of institution, whether it's a mental health institution, a drug rehabilitation, a group home, anything like that, your benefits are cut because you are considered to be in an institution. Jail, if you're in jail for longer than, I believe, a month or so, they suspend your benefits. And this is how they are going to cut maybe a couple of million people off of Social Security, because not everyone on Social Security is an old person who lives in a home that's paid for. There's a lot of disabled people, a lot of veterans, mental health, people who are suffering from mental health. They are homeless because of high rent, just a whole plethora of reasons why people will be homeless, or not really homeless, because this is also happening to property owners. If you have a piece of property and you have a tent on it or a camper, but it's off grid, they now consider that homeless. If you're not plugged into the public municipal water supply, if you don't have sewage, if you don't have electricity, they consider it an illegal camp, and you can be arrested for it, even on your own property. Okay, so people who have made homes outside of society, like people who are in that encampment in California called Slab City, and all over the United States there's small encampments. Florida had a bunch that was recently bulldozed and whatnot outside of Miami, where people just gather there and live off the grid. You can no longer do that in the United States. If you're not plugged in, even if you own the land, you have to spend tens of thousands of dollars obtaining permits to get some type of water or sewage line installed. that runs into the municipal sewage or water system, and the same thing with electricity. And if you don't have these utilities established on this property, you cannot dwell there. Okay, and this is all local. They're doing this on a local level. That way, he can keep his word and say he didn't touch Social Security. The states did. So this is how it's going to work. So they'll come to you on your piece of land, or if you're camping on some type of public land or land that no one's claiming that you're trespassing on, or if you're just homeless in the streets, sleeping behind a dumpster or whatnot, you're going to be given an option to either go to jail or go into a shelter. And if you pick either, your benefits will be suspended. And these shelters, we just seen one in Louisiana where they spent $17 million to round up about 150 homeless people. They put them in this old warehouse off of Louisa Street in New Orleans East. And them to stay there, unless if they had a job, they can leave and go to their job, but they had to come back. And they were locked down for an entire month. And they did this to clear the streets for the Super Bowl and Mardi Gras and New Year's Eve, which is a big celebration here in New Orleans. So they spent $17 million the federal government had gave the state, and they housed about 150 people for about 30 days. No one got long-term housing. So you can imagine this across the board, all across the nation. They're going to have these pop-up, federally subsidized homeless shelters that will work in compliance with local laws that will force people to either take shelter there and have their benefits suspended, or they will go to jail and the same thing will happen. So, and if you amplify this, or if you add it all up, state by state, each municipality, each county, large city, you're talking about, there's millions and millions of people who are technically homeless, meaning they don't have a lease in their name. Even if they couch surfing, and let's say a cop stops and frisk you, they find out you couch surfing, they stop and frisk you, your ID does not match the place where you're sleeping that night, you're considered homeless. And you're going to have that option of either going into a federally subsidized local shelter, or you go to jail. And this is going to be used on a grand scale to reduce the debt, or reduce the amount of people who are collecting benefits, who paid into the system, by the way. You paid into Social Security, but you will not be able to obtain those benefits unless you are either a property owner, or you are residing someplace in which you are leasing it, or the place has utilities, has a water, gas, electricity, sewage that is registered to that property to you, and you're residing there. And there's a lot of people out there who are just kind of living abroad and living in RVs and campers and in vans and in their cars, who are disabled. Some of them are even elderly, some of them are veterans, and they are in danger of getting cut. And now the 200 and 300-year-old people, imaginary people who were supposedly on, they didn't say they were collecting money, they just said they were on the logs, they were on the books with Social Security. They're going to say that the money that they're saving from forcing all of these homeless people into these shelters, they're going to say that that money was from the 200 and 300-year-old people who were collecting benefits. And they're going to expect the public to buy that. And most of the public will, because homeless people are greatly marginalized and they don't have a voice in society. And who are they going to complain to? So if you got, 3 million homeless people who are forced into either a jail or a federally subsidized state shelter, all that money's going to come off the books, and then they're going to introduce it to the public to where, oh, look at the money we saved. We didn't cut anybody's benefits. We just took the 200 and 300-year-old people, the imaginary illegal aliens who are on Social Security. I don't understand how an illegal alien can collect Social Security. They haven't paid anything into it. So I think that's another fallacy created by the media. It just doesn't exist. I don't know anyone. If anybody knows an illegal alien who's collecting Social Security, drop it in the comments. But it's a grand plan, a grand scam to get people off of Social Security, elderly people, disabled people, veterans, people with mental health problems, to force them into a federal subsidized shelter or into a jail. And either that or have their benefits cut. They don't want anybody living off the grid. And then after that, they're probably going to start targeting everybody who's living abroad. Because up until recently, if someone who is collecting Social Security, they can go to Mexico, they can go to Asia, and they can live there and collect their benefits. But that is being slowly phased out. And the way they're doing that is if they find out you're out of country, they're going to summon you back in. And it's up to you to get on a plane in Malaysia or wherever the hell you're at in the world and fly into the Social Security Administration in the hometown where you used to live in to just show your face there so you can retain the benefits that you paid into. So it's a grand scam by the Trump administration. It is disguised and hidden under local municipality and state laws, state homeless laws, and it's going to be a grand purge. They're going to purge millions of people who paid into Social Security. They're going to purge them out because they're not in the system. They're not paying property taxes, and they're not paying utilities, and they're not plugged into. They don't have a smart meter on the property they reside at. They want everybody plugged in. If you're not plugged into the system, they will force you to plug in. They'll go out into the middle of nowheres, take you, your dog, and your tent, throw the tent away, euthanize the dog, and force you to either go into a shelter or go into jail. And either way, you will lose your financial independence. So this is something that you should take note of. I'm going to cut this video kind of short, under 15 minutes. I don't want to keep rambling on about it, but I will do a part 2 where actual numbers. The only thing I have numbers for is that shelter in Louisiana that they spent $17 million to house 150 people for 30 days. Florida, the state of Florida, is doing a larger program where they're opening multiple shelters in multiple cities across the state. California's starting to do it, and it's happening all over the country. So when I do the part 2, I will get the early numbers of how many people are being detained, if that's even available yet. And you mark my words, 3 years down the line, they will start announcing how Social Security was cut due to a lot of people who are starting to drop dead from the inoculation, the 2020 inoculation. Those things are going to start kicking in and killing people off. And then you're going to start seeing more and more people being forced into some type of lockdown shelter type situation. They're going to take everybody who's off the grid and they're going to put you either in jail or some state shelter, and they're going to suspend your benefits that you paid in for, your pension. So it's something to take note of, and it's certainly something that you should follow.